So OTAs for the Steelers. We'll go to that later. Steelers are on the field. Aaron Rodgers is officially back. It's a one-year deal. So I've been critical of the Steelers, and I've said the rest of the league appears to understand how important the quarterback position is. They treat it like a slot corner or an interior offensive lineman. We'll get to it later. Now, I would feel bad for the Steelers if they really did care about it or they got trapped because there wasn't a lot of options. But I want you to think about this. Just in the last year to two, they could have signed Sam Darnold for under $40 million. That was available. They could have drafted Jackson Dart. They had the 21st pick. They wouldn't even have had to move up. They could have drafted Jackson Dart. No. They took guess what they took? A defensive tackle. So Pittsburgh. Signed Kyler Murray was available. Do you know how much it cost the Vikings? $1.3 million. So Darnold available, draft Jackson Dart, sign Kyler Murray for cheap.
Malik Willis.
Also, Daniel Jones, not my favorite, was available for a reasonable number. And for the record, Malik Willis, who I think is wildly underrated, J-Mac thinks I'm crazy, he was also available under $30 million. So there were 4 or 5 options. 2 or 3 were obviously better. Malik Willis would be, in my opinion, but that's yet to be proven. And you say, Colin, but Aaron was excellent last year. Here are the Steelers quarterback rankings since 2019. They are 29th in passing yards, 26th in passing first downs. They are tied for 26th in passing touchdowns. Big pass plays 27th, passer rating 23rd. It's not working. And I am not saying that winning Super Bowls is easy. It is not easy. Sometimes you need a trick play from Nick Foles and Doug Peterson. It's not easy. There's a little bit of randomness to winning the big game. But if you're not winning playoff games, it is because absolutely you're getting in your own way. And you could say, well, Colin, you love Justin Herbert. He hasn't won a playoff game. That's right. Because the Chargers, and I've told Dean Spanos, the owner of this, you guys went cheap on coaches. When you finally paid money for a head coach, Jim Harbaugh, suddenly the roster's better and the team's better.
Won a playoff game. That's right. Because the Chargers, and I've told Dean Spanos, the owner of this, you guys went cheap on coaches. When you finally paid money for a head coach, Jim Harbaugh, suddenly the roster is better and the team's better. But they still haven't won a playoff game. So, but okay, this is such a confusing take from Colin because he was saying how much the Steelers should bring back Aaron and how Aaron shouldn't take a discount and all of this stuff. So, I'm definitely a little bit confused, but I might really want to talk about this. But before I do, please Pittsburgh Steelers fans, do not forget to subscribe and watch the full length of the video. When you guys do that, views go through the roof, subscribers go through the roof, and it is without a shadow of a doubt the best possible way to support the growth of this channel so I can keep making the best unbiased, grounded, genuine Pittsburgh Steelers content that I possibly can. So, please do consider doing that. But Aaron Rodgers, Steelers, $22 million deal, which is also a huge discount. I understand what Colin is saying. And I went on a whole rant, because I just made a video from Get Up because it was like, Jalen Hurts is under pressure. What else is new? And I kind of talked about how I really respect that they don't take failures lightly, that the pressure is always on, that people will get fired, quarterbacks will be moved on. If you don't win. And I used the Cowboys as a reference point where it's like the Eagles would not linger as long as they did with multiple coaches that they've had, quarterbacks that they've had. It's just like they're trying to win. And the Steelers seemingly have lost some of that. And we can say, well, listen, come on. They're always competitive enough, so they can never really get a high draft pick, etc., etc. And it's not incorrect, but also just look at what the Los Angeles Rams did with Ty Simpson. It's like, you can make a trade and have a higher draft pick. There are moves that the Steelers can do. Think about what Max Crosby went for, what some of these other players were going to go for Myles Garrett, but obviously we know exactly what it's like. Could have done something like that with TJ Watt. Like you can put yourself in a position to have multiple first round picks, high first round like there are moves to be able to make, right? Like there are definitely situations that you can be creative and work with. And again, I'm a fan of the Mike McCarthy hire. And we talked about, the Steelers maybe getting Kyler, Malik Willis, talked about Sam Darnold. Like there are these moves that they could have made and didn't, or just waited too long. And it is an interesting situation. On the flip side, they've made some moves, but they well, hey, we got Russell Wilson for $1 million and Justin Fields for I don't even know how much, pretty much nothing, those quarterbacks. So, they did that version. They did the Malik Willis version. They did the Sam Darnold, Kyler Murray, etc. version. They were hey, Russ actually had a pretty good year in Denver. Him and Sean Payne just don't get along. Let's bring them in. And they still had Justin Fields, where they're yeah, the Chicago Bears don't know what they're doing. Their team is a mess. Their coaching staff's a mess. Bring them in. And so, it's not the worst idea. They took a stab at Kenny Pickett. And this is where I'll get, you got to remember the conversation, 'cause Colin's well, they didn't get Jackson Dart. And it's well, they pretty much drafted whatever year it was after 22 or, whatever year it was. That version's Jackson Dart and Kenny Pickett. And in fact, a lot of people fell out of love with Jackson Dart. Originally, when they thought the Rams were interested, they were oh, Jackson Dart. Then they were no. Colin was I think Jackson Dart should go in the second round or third round, later. And he was all on board with Kenny Pickett being drafted to the Steelers in the first round. He said the Steelers know he's inside their building. They've seen him. And then it obviously didn't work out, but still. So you can't always just say that a team's doing nothing just because some of the things they've done have failed. Now, do I think the Steelers can do more on that front? Absolutely. And that's why I said you can make certain trades that leverage your ability to draft higher. Heck, the Steelers could have done that this year and traded a TJ Watt, etc., and then potentially position themselves to draft a quarterback next year. Be it, be top 10, whether from their own draft or from, someone else's pick, or at the very least have extra capital to trade up or bite the bullet and just be terrible this year. Then, right, rather than do a whole thing with Aaron, 22 million, etc., but then they also took a flyer on a quarterback this year's draft, last year's, later in the round. So, but listen, if you're a Steelers fan, would you be more excited if the Steelers got a new young coach, whether offensively or defensively, whether it was Jesse Mintler, Terror or Halfley? I was kind of combining them together, right? Or Halfley, or right, going out and getting even last year's Kelmore, Ben Johnson, just adding some extra juice, whether offensively or defensively, going out getting that coach, getting a new young quarterback, a top draft prospect. It's just think about 2024 quarterbacks that are genuinely competitive. Jaden, Drake, Caleb, Bo, how elite, how special will those quarterbacks be? I don't know when it's all said and done, right? Will they truly become the next top 4, top 5 quarterbacks in NFL? I have no idea. But they're competitive and they're interesting, and it definitely puts you in positions to win games and feels like your franchise is moving forward when you have them. And so it's just that is where I would appreciate the Steelers taking bigger swings, where it's just you can get a coach that feels like his stock is trending upwards. You can get a you could have had a Halfley. You could have had a Jesse Terror. Those coaches were available to you as well. And then you can bring in a quarterback and in a lot of ways to me like a Malik Willis some of these moves end up being such no-brainers because one the money is made up it's just monopoly money so like even if you waste money and it goes nowhere doesn't matter it's monopoly money doesn't matter and if it ends up not working if like because he said like believe Colin believes in Malik Wells as do I and if he says. And then he said, Jack thinks I'm crazy. Well, let's just say Colin is crazy. And I'm crazy, too. Malik Willis is not that good. Well, then the team will be bad. Perfect. Then you'll be able to draft a quarterback. And if I'm right, and if Colin's right, well, then you have an awesome quarterback on a great deal. Boom. Done. It ends up being a win-win. A lot of times when you take a swing, it ends up being a win-win as long as you're not exchanging like massive draft capital, right? Like 3 first-round picks cause now that really crushes you and now you really got to pay the consequences for it or you're trading 2 first rounds and you're paying someone $200 million, right? Cause like now you're in a situation where you're like our money's so tied up and we gave up draft capital, right? Like now you're double hurt. But if you take a swing, whether it be a first-round draft pick or just a draft pick in general or paying for a player like that like a Malik Wills whatever to me it's not really that much of a gamble. A real gamble in life is like when if you fail it's like oh you're done. It's like well it's the consequences are devastating. It's not a gamble if you're totally fine. You're like oh well actually next year it helps me out. Right? If you go to a casino and you're like, I'm going to gamble and go all in. But if you lose, it's like, well, it doesn't really matter because I just get all this money back next year. Well, then it's not really a gamble. Yeah, it's a gamble if you put all your money all in and you lose and now you're broke and now you don't have any more money and now you can't afford rent. It's not a way it works. So even like a gamble with a Kyler Murray and Malik Wills, there's no consequences. And in fact, again, if it works, it works. Then it's hoey. And if it doesn't, then now you're in a position to draft a quarterback that you would want in next year's draft. So it actually is just like some of the smartest moves you can make. Like they're not actually gambles. And it's actually very much how Harry Roseman operates. They're always like, oh, how he takes big swings. And it's like he takes big swings where if it works, it's a grand slam. And if it doesn't even matter. Like it literally doesn't even matter. Like that's the best way to operate. But I do find it interesting where people were like, talking about like, oh my God, Aaron Rodgers, what's going on? He should be with the Steelers. This makes sense, etc., etc. And now that he's with the Steelers, we're like, I don't know. Was it the right move to do? And it's like, and Colin does always emphasize the Steelers are like number 1 in defensive spending and at the bottom of offensive spending. It's because they don't have a quarterback that they're paying $50-60 million. Like I'd love to see those numbers when we remove quarterbacks. Like that's what I would like to see. I think it's been a tricky situation. I'll end here because I think at the end of the day it's been a tricky situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers because of the levels that they keep reaching at and so that it does become harder to move on from and to be able to make some of these moves. But I really do think there were absolute moves that they could be making. But I also because when I talked about like a half or a mentor or whatnot, like I do believe McCarthy is a good hire though. Like I don't think it's a bad hire. I think he's a very very competent stabilizing hire. And if you're trying to just rebuild an offensive culture in the NFL for you, if like that's the path that you're looking to take now, then I think there's no problem with the McCarthy because then I do trust his experience, his knowledge, his temperament to like kind of rework that, get us going offensively, moving in the right direction. Rather than some young offensive coach who's just like trying to do whatever he can just to make sure that he keeps being a coach in the NFL. It's just like I do appreciate that. And I would, like even going through the draft process for a quarterback with a Mike McCarthy. There would be a lot of trust there, right? Is it going to redefine the franchise for the next 20 years? Probably not. But can it set things right? Can it set things in motion? You know, we talk about like a bridge quarterback. I could see Mike McCarthy being like a bridge offensive coach. Like I see that relationship potentially working well. So I don't think it's bad, and even having an Aaron Rodgers there, like I am actually really interested to see what that all looks like, what McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers 2.0 looks like. And the Steelers have made some moves, because again we'll talk about offensive spending. It's like they went out and had got a DK Metcalf, they went out and got Aaron Rodgers, they went out and got Pittman, etc. It's like they're trying to make some moves. They got a really interesting tight end in a body that no one has ever seen. It's like they are taking some of these swings. They are trying to, work a little magic here. Just hasn't fully worked out quite yet. But I'll really talk about gambling. I'll put all the chips forward for this year and really see right the deck. The decisions that they've made now over really essentially over these last 2 years since getting Aaron, DK, etc. And now it's all culminating into this year right here. You have Michael McCarthy, you got the offensive head coach, you're bringing back Aaron back, you made another move to try to boost your offense, etc., etc. And it's just like, what does this all look like right now? That to me will be the main question to chew on. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers? Was it the right move to bring Aaron back? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single comment, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get into some discussions, get some fights, but ultimately let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be a part of. I think we're all on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.